The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all.
One of the most incredible things I have witnessed over this past year and a half of Trump 2.0 is how insanely in sync the Black community has been. I mean, right after the election, there was this wholesale withdrawal from politics. And it was like suddenly Black folks all over the country were gardening and doing Tai Chi, anything other than protesting. And then a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court case hit, gutting the Voting Rights Act, and suddenly everybody is activated again. And folks are marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I just have never seen a community so in tune with one another without any sort of real marching orders. And it just made me think that the Black community really is the canary in the coal mine. And they could probably save us a whole lot of grief as a nation if we would just wake up and pay attention.
The reason why poor white people continue to support Donald Trump, even though his policy directly makes their lives even worse, is because they don't actually vote for politicians on the basis of policy. They actually vote for ideology. Donald Trump embodies whiteness and he upholds white supremacy. And for a lot of poor white people who have accomplished nothing in life, who have very little access to opportunity, upholding something that gives them worth, even though it's based on the one thing that they had no control over, even though it's based on a lie, is more important than fighting for a system where everyone benefits. And this is why there's always this sort of state of confusion when people say, how can you vote against universal health care? Why would you not want more money going to schools? Why are you okay with a politician blatantly taking your tax dollars and pocketing it, rather than using it for the greater good? When poor Europeans came to America, they received a benefit in America that they were not afforded in Europe. And that was whiteness. And all they had to do was abandon everything they learned in Europe, abandon their heritage, their language, their customs, their traditions, anglicize their names, and they were afforded every single privilege that they did not have in Europe. They could be entrepreneurs, have access to loans, send their children to good schools. They were finally on the top of the hierarchy. And I don't think people realize how much success and building wealth and having money is tied up into whiteness. It is a political term that was born out of capitalism. And so for these white people who have not actually succeeded under this system, whiteness means everything to them. This is why you have poor people who are so against systems like socialism, even though it would give them more power. It would give them more agency. That would actually require that they give up the one thing that they value the most, the one thing that gives them value. And if that means worshiping someone like Donald Trump, while he destroys Social Security, makes their lives more unaffordable, makes it more difficult for them to access healthcare, that is what they're willing to sacrifice.
Every time Black Americans take a step forward in this country, white supremacists throw a tantrum. We call it progress. They call it a threat. And every era of advancement, every hard-won inch toward equality, has been met with a violent wave of backlash. So, let's talk about it. Donald Trump recently reposted a meme on Truth Social blaming Barack and Michelle Obama for worsening racism, saying they set America back 100 years. This coming from a man whose entire public life has been steeped in racism, from refusing to rent apartments to Black tenants in the 1970s, to calling for the death penalty for the Central Park Five, Black and brown teenage boys at the time, even after they were proven innocent, to spreading the racist birther lie that President Obama wasn't born in America. And now, in 2025, he's just proving that the playbook never changed, only the players did. When enslaved people were freed, what came next? Reconstruction. Black men winning elections, opening schools, building communities. And after that, the Ku Klux Klan, voter suppression, lynching campaigns, and the violent overthrow of Black-led governments across the South. Progress met with terror. I did make a video on Reconstruction a while back, so go check it out. When Black veterans came home from World War I in uniform, having fought for democracy abroad, white mobs murdered them for daring to expect democracy at home. That became known as the Red Summer of 1919. In one of the most haunting examples, a Black soldier named Wilbur Little was lynched in Georgia for refusing to take off his army uniform after stepping off the train that brought him home from war. He had risked his life for a country that still refused to see him as a man. And he wasn't the only one. Across the nation, white mobs attacked black veterans simply for wearing their uniforms in public, because those uniforms symbolized equality. And then there's Tulsa. When black prosperity blossomed in Tulsa's Greenwood district, a thriving neighborhood known as Black Wall Street, the backlash was swift and brutal. Greenwood wasn't just wealthy, it was successful on its own terms. Black doctors, lawyers, barbershops, grocery stores, newspapers, tailors, hotels, and a fully functioning economy built by black families who were shut out of white society. Some residents were millionaires in today's dollars, all of it built just 50 years after slavery was abolished. Proof that black excellence could flourish when given even a sliver of space. And that's exactly why white supremacists burned it all down. In 1921, after a false accusation against a black teenager, white mobs, many deputized by local police, stormed Greenwood. They looted homes, they set businesses on fire. Eyewitnesses reported private planes dropping incendiary bombs. Black residents were shot in the street or dragged from their homes. By the time it ended, over 35 square blocks were destroyed. Up to 300 black men, women, and children were killed. More than 10,000 black residents were left homeless overnight. And not a single white rioter was ever held accountable. Greenwood wasn't destroyed because of crime or chaos or uprisings. It was destroyed because white supremacists couldn't tolerate the sight of black wealth, black self-sufficiency, and black dignity thriving without white control. That's the pattern, and you see it again in the 1960s. After the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act finally outlawed segregation and protected black voting rights in 1965, white politicians had a problem. They could no longer legally defend segregation. They could no longer say, we don't want black people in our schools, or we don't want black people voting. So they rebranded their racism with new language. They called it law and order. Law and order wasn't about crime. It was a political weapon designed to frame black Americans as dangerous, disruptive, and undeserving without ever mentioning race. Barry Goldwater hinted at it in 1964. Richard Nixon perfected it in 1968. His advisors admitted on tape that law and order was designed to attract racist voters without sounding racist. And the policy fallout was devastating. Mass incarceration, the war on drugs, over-policing black neighborhoods, mandatory minimums, stop and frisk, all justified by coded language white voters found comforting. Ronald Reagan doubled down with states' rights and the racist welfare queen myth. Bill Clinton expanded the prison industrial complex even further, and Donald Trump wrapped it all in Make America Great Again, a slogan rooted in turning back the clock on civil rights. Same playbook, same backlash, same message. Black progress is the threat. White grievance is the answer. So when Trump reposts a meme claiming the Obamas made racism worse, understand what he's really saying, that the sight of a black family in the White House, educated, poised, and powerful, was unbearable for people whose identity depends on feeling superior. Obama didn't make America racist. He revealed how deeply racism still runs. Trump is the backlash to it, the embodiment of everything this country refuses to face about itself. This is unfinished history. The same forces that once burned Greenwood, that fought to keep schools segregated, that silenced civil rights leaders, they never disappeared. They just put on suits and ran for office. If we want this cycle to end, white Americans have to stop pretending racism lives in the past. We have to face it in our laws, in our classrooms, in our neighborhoods, and in ourselves. Because silence is what keeps the system alive, and now is not the time for silence. Black Americans shouldn't have to prove their humanity again and again, while those who spread hate are rewarded with power. And yet here we are, a nation still built on denial, still terrified of accountability, still repeating the same cycle because too many white Americans would rather cling to denial than face the truth. But history doesn't move on its own. We do. So the question isn't whether the backlash will fade. It's whether we'll finally have the courage to end it, to confront what's right in front of us, to make sure this time progress doesn't have to start over again. If you'd like to support my work, there's a tip jar in my bio. I truly appreciate it.
Black people, as a collective, we should have been supporting Black businesses from the very beginning, okay? And I am also talking to myself in this because, the Rick Chow situation has definitely opened my eyes to how people of color that aren't Black don't really see Black people as human beings, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying all people of color who aren't Black feel that same way, but it is just an overwhelming majority of non-Black people of color who want to uphold white supremacy in thinking that they're going to get their fair share when they're not, because white people, they don't like any of us, you know what I mean? So I'm just really happy to see Black people spending their money wisely and going to places where they are respected, where they are supported, and just pouring back into our own community, okay? Because here's the thing. It's not racist for Black people to want to find more Black-owned businesses in order to have money circulating within our own community, okay? Because historically, Black businesses, when Black people were by themselves, Wall Street, we can talk about that, people just targeting our businesses and our communities just because we were helping ourselves. It is disgusting. It is a piece of history in America that honestly is just really heartbreaking. So I feel like since we have the choice and the resources to support each other, we should. So I am in full support of all of us supporting Black businesses, and I can't wait to find more. So, yeah.
So now that I have fallen down this rabbit hole, I just jumped onto Twitters, and I got an alt Twitter where I pretend to be a MAGA guy, and I saw a live, and I am not kidding you. This dude, all these dudes these farmer dudes in there, these farm owner dudes, they're saying, well, we thought the Blacks would come back and do the jobs because they don't have jobs. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but Black people have jobs, and you thought you were getting your slaves back is basically what you were saying. That's what you thought. It's still going right now. And I'm not going to post a link to it because I don't want to give these people a voice. But they think they're in a safe space on Twitter. They're not.
So I want to talk about this article really quick because it's all starting to make so much sense right now. This author and journalist was having lunch with friends. There was a white guy and he's married to a Black lady, and they were talking politics. And he says that farmers weren't worried about Trump deporting migrants because, wait for it, they thought because unemployment was so high for Black people that these Black people would run back to the fields and do the jobs that the migrants were doing when they got deported. So she asked, where'd you get that information from? White farmer TikTok or MAGA Facebook memes? Where'd you get this information from? And her and the wife basically started giving him information, letting him know unemployment is only 6.8% for African Americans, and 93% of Black people are currently working. Got so caught up in what they were hearing at Fox News and other places thinking Black jobs, immigrants are taking Black jobs, that they just assumed they'd get rid of the immigrants and Black people would take the immigrants' jobs? Sir, our ancestors did not march, die, and fight for civil rights so we could go back to the fields? What? But shout out to the Latino immigrant population that have mastered that labor with skill and stamina. This country doesn't even appreciate it enough. Oh, and by the way, when they do try to hire Americans, Black or white, to do those jobs, most of them don't even last half a day. They just ghost them without even picking up their paychecks. True story. So y'all, tell me, do you really believe that they thought Black people were planning to replace immigrants in that labor force if they got deported? Because I need to know who was smoking that logic.
Right now, Black South Africans are uniting, and the bold decision they have taken to unite among themselves is hurting Mega's policy. You know, every policy is designed to make sure that they continue to keep the blacks under some kind of control, because everything of his is about the white supremacy. But black people right now have decided to learn how to control their emotions, because the moment you are able to do that, anything at all they do doesn't get to you to react. Like one of the speakers said, right now the black people are no longer doing what they used to do. It means that before, whatever that doesn't go well with them, they act in some sort of way. But at this time, they have stopped. They have not seen that no, we don't need violence. We don't need to be aggressive. All we need is to unite. The moment we are able to unite, we will defeat what is fighting us. So, right now, the black community are now looking inward, asking themselves what we can do in order to thrive. Because using the physical energy isn't helping. So this move for them not to act, but to make sure they unite, is destroying everything that is being labeled against them, or whatever system that is designed to fight against them. And that is exactly what the blacks need right now. You know, it has always been divide and conquer. So they put the systems in place to divide you so they can rule over you. But the moment you come together in unity, you conquer that. So even in Africa here, this is exactly what they are doing. They are dividing the blacks with systems, with this and that and that. So at the end of the day, because we are so divided, we are not able to unite to fight for the right thing that we deserve. And until we are able to unite as a people, it will be difficult to overcome the system that is working against us. Everything of theirs right now is against the black race. But the best move the black Americans have taken, that is sending shockwaves across. The designer of the system is the unification. Let's support our own. Let's come together. Let's build together. Let's invest in ourselves. And that is destroying every plan. You know, sometimes you don't need to make noise to send your grievances across. The most silent thing you can ever do to win is silence. Silence is a big weapon, because when you don't speak, when you don't act, people don't get to know who you are and the next thing they need to do. So silence is the most important thing that you need when you want to have the power in order to fight for what you want. And this is turning tables around, because if they are not able to know what you are thinking of, it is difficult to design what they can use to cross you. And we are seeing that black Americans are now acting in that regard, which is giving them the power that people fear. Black Americans are now giving them headache. And we hope it continues this way, because with unity, you can defeat anything. With unity, you can rise. With unity, you can gain the power you want. And that is all that we need as black people. Unification. Let's stop the segregation. Before we can get to be recognized worldwide as a race, we need to stop the segregation, because our power lies in our unity. Our freedom lies in our unity. Our sovereignty lies in our unity. So that time of us dividing among ourselves should be a thing of the past, so we can regain the power we are looking for.